Welcome back to the Prayin and Slayin Podcast, the official podcast of Light the Fire Outdoors, where we are all about supporting veterans and conservation projects in our local communities. Today, we have a special conservation series with the American Bear Foundation and its founder and CEO, Joe Kondelis. And we're looking forward to having a conversation to learn more about this organization and the efforts they're putting out there to ensure that we have bear hunting populations and seasons that are safe for future generations to come and all the different places we can hunt these awesome critters. So with that, let's jump into the conversation with Joe and the American Bear Foundation. Well, Joe, welcome to the Prayin and Slayin Podcast, and we're excited to have you as part of our conservation series, and really just looking forward to learning all about the American Bear Foundation and how it started and everything that you do with it.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. It's kind of a funny story of a silly idea that has multiplied and grown into this really a national movement and a national nonprofit that is gaining traction daily. We had talked about this, me and a buddy of mine in Montana, where I grew up in Montana and in Southwest Montana, and kind of, I didn't grow up bear hunting. I grew up elk hunting, deer hunting, antelope hunting. We fished and everything. But my dad, and my grandpa just were like, I don't know why you want to bear hunt, there's elk and deer. And I'm like, well, it'd be kind of cool. So
yeah.
And I go through this because it kind of helps build the story of why we wanted to do something like this foundation. But I started kind of bear hunting when I was 17 and didn't have a clue what I was doing. Really just tried to bear hunt like I would elk hunt in Southwest Montana and didn't do very good. And not a lot of people were very helpful on how to bear hunt. And part of it's because they're just at that time and even more, and now not as bad, but there just wasn't a lot of guys that bear hunted. Bears were incidental takes. Like you had a bear tag if you're out elk hunting or whatever, but I looked at it as man, I can hunt in the spring if I buy a bear tag. So that just adds another 2.5 months of hunting for me in the year. And I don't chase turkeys. So I was like, I got to do bears. So, so I just kind of started bear hunting, doing that, really struggling. And over the course of about 3-4 years, kind of learned through trial and error, me and a buddy. And that's when I really found the passion for bears that it wasn't something I just woke up and was like, oh, cool, I'm going to do this. It took a long time. I started developing an appreciation for bears and bear hunting that I don't think I didn't see it coming, right? I just thought I would do this for something to be outdoors,
Yeah.
And then I really started just diving into bear hunting as something I wanted to learn more about. And really what it is for bear hunting is you have to understand the species, and not a lot of people know a lot about bears. You can talk to anyone and they're going to know probably more than most on whitetail and on elk and on, but not a lot of people knew a lot about bears. So I started going down the road of really trying to understand bears and black bears in my area. And that's when I started thinking man, this is such a cool species. Well, in 2005, I moved to Wyoming. And I moved into northwest corner of Wyoming, right along Yellowstone National Park. And I tell you what, that was an education, because I went from being in a black bear area with quite a few numbers to an area that is overrun with grizzly bears and has very few black bears. And I started bear hunting in Wyoming and being like, geez, man, I don't see any black bears. I see grizzly bears coming out of my ears, So I was like, I wonder, if something's going on there. And that is one of the initial sparks for me, was there's no one to ask. And there's no one that's does anyone care that there's black bears are hard to find, but we can see grizzly bears everywhere? And it kind of was there's no group out there that's really hey, someone needs to go to bat for not only black bears, but all bears, but also bear hunters. There's not a national voice for bear hunters. And it just kind of was well, I want to do it for that reason. And then I was like, man, it'd be cool if there was a group out there that was a resource for people that didn't know a lot about bear hunting, that wanted to get into the sport and could go to something I didn't have. In 1997, when I started, the internet wasn't a huge resource like it is now. So you had to check out books or order magazines. And it was hard. And I wanted to make sure that there was something for that. And I was like, man, I don't know how to do it. I'm a business guy. And so I was like, well, if you set it up kind of like a business, but had no idea how to start a nonprofit or run a nonprofit or anything. And so we just kind of said, like, let's rip the Band-Aid and go with it and try it. And that was in 2007. And now
2007.
Yeah. That's when we actually officially got our IRS 501c3 paperwork. So, but we kind of had started in about 06, 05, 06 to try and get it created. And it's not just something you can do on a wing. You got to there's laws and rules, and you need, it's hard.
You got that right. No, that's for sure, man. So 2007 is when you started, and the buddy who got us connected, Eric Workington, he's out of the Pacific Northwest. So, like, obviously, I know you have chapters up there. Are you guys established in a bunch of states? Are you kind of tied to that Pacific Northwest region, or how far are you guys reaching now?
Well, we're kind of across the board. It's we went from one extreme to the next and didn't fill the middle. So we have a chapter in Virginia. That was our first chapter, actually. For a nonprofit that started in Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and those were our roots, because we were just going to be a 3-state nonprofit and worry about those 3 states. Yeah. And then it was like people started being like, "Hey, you guys are doing cool work. We'd like to do that over here." Then we started as the Yellowstone Country Bear Hunters Association. And I still have some old hats and stuff, and they're worth gold now to the OG members. And then we kind of got into a little fracas with some other NGOs about our logo that I just drew and made on my own. And they were like, it's kind of like ours. So we're like, good time to rebrand, because we don't have the money to go to court. And so we rebranded as the Western Bear Foundation. And the idea was, let's focus on the western half of the United States, because a lot of the issues surrounding bears and bear hunting on the West are similar. And I was like, man, the East Coast and central US, the bear trouble and the things going on with bears are so different. And we don't have anyone there really. And so we rebranded as the Western Bear Foundation, and then started getting a lot of inquiries for people out in Virginia and some other states that were having some issues with some, bear hunting, maybe, stuff coming under fire for running dogs on bears. And so that usually brings people into the fold. And it's like, well, we don't have a way to do chapters, but I knew, and in talking to our board, I was like, the only way to make this work is if we have chapters, because we're all volunteer. So we don't have a guy that can be like, or a gal that can be like, I'm going to head to the East Coast, see what's going on out there, Yeah. So we were like, we need chapters in these states. They'll understand the issue more than me sitting in Cody, Wyoming, And so we amended our bylaws in, I think it was doesn't matter, 2022 or something, 2021, to start accepting chapters. That wasn't a plan of ours. We never thought we'd get there. I mean, we just were like, yeah. And so when we did that, Virginia signed up first, and then it was California. So the two opposite ends. And then through that, we've picked up Oregon, Washington, Missouri, are now chapters. And then Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming, I kind of still just kind of run and like do that all together, but we are trying to get chapters in, eventually, 10-year goal would be to have chapters in most states that need us. Not all states need us because they have very strong bear hunting conservation organizations in them already. So, but yeah, the for me was truing up the areas that we have the most to lose as bear hunters, maybe, or there's bigger issues. So California always fighting for bear hunting. Washington lost their spring bear season. Oregon is sandwiched in between the two, and it's a pretty liberal area as far as like how they view hunting and conservation. So wanted to secure that, get some things going. Virginia's has a lot going on, and try and build out kind of there. And then, in the middle, the Rocky Mountains, where we have a lot of great bear hunting and bears, we tend to not see yet the attacks on bear hunting and some of the conservation issues. So that's why we went that direction.
Yeah, for sure. And you're definitely, I like that you guys went kind of the way you did, because all the different states that have them, like you said, every reg book is totally different, and the way you hunt them is totally different, and all that stuff. I've been kind of all over the place with our Air Force life. We were in Virginia for the first 4 years where we were stationed together, and it's I mean, you can kind of do a spot and stock thing up in the mountains a little bit, but really the bulk of it is guys running them in the swamps and stuff, kind of in the lower country towards the Carolina borders and stuff is pretty popular. And then we actually went on a bear hunt in West Virginia once, and it was about the wildest thing I've ever been a part of. It's just like, there was the first time I was with hounds and a whole group of people, and I mean, it was just they got one bear while we were there, and it was about the most chaotic scene I've ever seen in my life.
Heck yeah.
It's a great memory, but it's like, man, like I wouldn't say I got turned off of bear hunting, but I was like, I just don't know if that's my style, and I'd never hunted bears up until that point. So besides walking around the Great Dismal Swamp with a gun over my shoulder and, Phragmites that was twice as tall as I was, like, no chance I'm finding a bear, but I thought it was cool to do at the time. And then we got stationed in Montana and got to finally go do the Western thing and just be out there in the wide open spaces and have some encounters with a couple of grizzlies. And my first bear I ever saw was a beautiful cinnamon black bear, but I knew as much about long range and mountain shooting as I did anything. Like, I was brand new, so that didn't work out. Let's put it that way. And but man, I fell in love with that. And but like you said, every state is just so different. And then the issues and politics obviously play a huge part in all of it. And so it's kind of cool that you guys are spread out like that.
The ecology of bears in different areas is so vast too. What we see affecting black bear numbers in Virginia and on the eastern seaboard is mange right now is a major thing. Mange is killing a lot of bears. We don't even know what that is in bear populations out west, where our densities are lower. With that comes, when you look at some of the states out east, and I bring up Virginia because we have a chapter there, like we in the West, and you lived in Montana now, how high up on the totem pole elk are. It's like elk, mule deer, whitetail, sheep, everything. And bears are really low on the totem pole out west. When you go out east, most of the totem poles are going to have bear at the very number one. They cherish bears and bear hunting more than most people in the West would ever believe. And so, there's a really strong population of bear hunters that are like, it is not a hobby, it is a way of life for them. And you've seen it in West Virginia. That is a normal thing. And that is what they do. And they take care of their hounds all year long. And that is like a way of life. That is what their grandparents and their great grandparents did. And those people are super passionate. And we kind of don't see that out west with bears, really. It's funny, it's not a resource concern. So people are just like, oh, cool, bears, and I'm the other way around.
Yeah, for sure. And it's always been on my bucket list. I just never made it happen. And it was, and going back to that West Virginia story, it was my turn to potentially shoot the bear when we treat it. But the way it all panned out, we were up on the top of this mountain, and the hounds had ran it up one side right next to a road. So he was like 50 yards, maybe just over the crest of this mountain and up in a tree. So that there was an older gentleman who'd been with him, to your point, for it's a generational thing. And he'd been hunting with him for decades and just he was the old guy and just never had a bear get treed somewhere that he could actually get it. And so I got this, like, as I was getting my gun loaded, some guy comes up, pats me on the back, goes, "Hey man, like, I don't know if you mind, but this is like probably his time to get a bear. Would you mind?" And I was like, "Well, I'll unload my shells and throw my camera on the gun and I'll film it for you if that works." So it's cool to be a part of it. Man, to your point, it was like die hard. And there was guys, like, I think most of the guys there, they might have, I'm sure they've all shot bears, throughout their time, but I think most of them were in it just for the dogs and the big hunt that goes on, and all these guys getting together and running their hounds and coordinating and everything that goes into it. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it's their elk camp that we have out west, really. I mean, that is their thing.
Exactly.
It's really neat. It's so different than what we see out here. But yeah, that's kind of the origin story and kind of where we are at now. Obviously, 5, 10, 15 years out, we have some very lofty goals. Being an all volunteer nonprofit has its challenges. We all work. And so the amount of time that you're allowed to not just allowed, but the amount of time that you can allocate to doing nonprofit stuff when you have families, and all of us do, and you know how it is and busy. It's challenging. The chapters have been so, I've been so grateful to have them, because that just spreads it out, right? Like everyone is kind of doing a little bit. And for right now, the model of being all volunteer is something we're trying to stick with. Just because if you're involved with us, you're in it for the right reasons.
Mhm.
Knowing
Yeah.
full well we'll eventually have paid people. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the only way, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just being uh be, being very conservative about how we spend other people's money through memberships and stuff and donations. Like we like right now that everything can go on the ground.
Yep.
One day it won't be that way, but we'll still have to be cognizant of, the mission and the goals that we had back in 2007
Yeah. Yeah, man. And it's
when we started.
for sure, and it was, and that to that point, conservation, the big national organizations that are out there, like the just kind of the big names in the hat would be NWTF, like the mega giants in that space. It's been interesting to kind of see that, like the structure of some of those organizations change. For the place I've worked for the last 8.5 years, I did the conservation program most of the time I was there, so I got to work with a bunch of the different orgs. But man, when COVID hit and all of a sudden, like all these in-person banquets weren't there to support these giant organizations, you saw them do some major internal cuts because number one, it impacts the mission, but obviously they were at a size where they felt that impact the most. And some of your smaller organizations really didn't change all that much. They kind of kept doing what they were doing. Their membership base is still strong, and it's just less of a ship you have to steer, I guess, even to keep
Yeah.
your dollars on target.
Well, and we're the small organizations like ours, and some of the all volunteer, and even the small ones that have paid staff, like we're used to scraping for crumbs. And so
Yeah.
we know how to get through hard years, because we never seen the years where, oh, you have $3 million donors. We don't have that. Like, I tell you what, we would light the world on fire if we did. But
Oh yeah.
so but I think it's a good thing for us right now, is sometimes you grow too fast. And I
Yeah.
think that's a challenge. You have goals to grow and you want to, but you have to temper your expectations sometimes, because
Yep.
if you grow too fast, you're just not able to backfill, and then I think things get out of line then. And so us kind of slowly growing and incrementally is made it so when we do have a hiccup or something, some growing pains, we're able to address it right now and not, oh my gosh, that was an issue 5 years ago and we never addressed it.
Yeah, man, for sure. It lets you kind of keep tabs on everything, but not have the pressure behind it, which is nice.
For sure.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, so how do you guys, you mentioned dollars going back to your mission. So how do you guys put those dollars back into the fire, I guess, as it relates to bears and their habitat and conservation, politics, all of it?
Yeah, and so most of our stuff, most of the money that we put on the ground is going for, whether it's research, might be population studies. So like, just for example, one of the biggest ones that we were involved with, and it took quite a few years to get going, was a population study in Wyoming. So in a lot of Western states, they don't have a number on how many bears they have. They have an estimate, and it's based off of harvest data, right? So we don't know, and bears are hard to count. We can't count them on the winter range.
Hmm.
And so we just kind of guess based off harvest data and algorithms that they punch in numbers and the age class of bears that are killed every year. And then they say, oh, well, we expect the population to be around here. So we
Hmm.
wanted to kind of build out a study that maybe could be mimicked across the whole US. And that one started in Wyoming quite a few years ago. And we actually had uh, a grad student at the University of Wyoming that we were funding to do some of the work with the Wyoming Game and Fish Department, where we would go around all summer and collar bears in certain ranges. And then those collars would, hopefully, if the bear wasn't killed during a season, that collar would stay on for 3 years and pop off, 2.5, 3 years, and it'd pop off. So we'd go
Hmm.
collect the collar, try and get the collar refurbished. And then we would use the data from that collar and figure out like its patterns of movement. And then the next year we would go around and we would put out hair collection sites based off of the grid of the bear's movement. Because we figured if one bear is occupying some space, that's probably suitable habitat for maybe more bears, and you could see on a overlay on like a Google, like, okay, this was an anomaly. He's out in the desert, but and so we put these grid sites up to collect hair, and then we would go around for a summer and collect black bear hair off of these barbed wire collection sites. And that was sent into labs to give us individual DNA. So basically to get a count. Now you're not going to collect every bear's hair, but it was more on the ground numbers and more on the ground data than using an algorithm based on harvest data. And so they could take that number and say, okay, based off the square miles that we had the collection sites and we had however many individual collections, we think the population's here. And so then what we did was moved it to a different range every year. And so that study just kind of concluded. And what was really cool with that study was she was able that several of the units that we used have bait sites. So we can bait in Wyoming in certain areas. Emily, who was our graduate student, was able to do a harvest vulnerability study and decide basically looking at what age class of bears are more vulnerable to be harvested over bait sites. And so you can take the hair and get individual, you can get the isotopes from the DNA and tell if that bear is eating like human food or food that is not natural in its environment. And I was like, man, that's way in the weed stuff. But so that is one study, and we've been a part of, we never do them on our own. We don't have the budget, but we've been a part of several studies like that. We do a lot of conflict mitigation stuff. So keeping bears out of trouble. That is a huge thing. You could spend 10 million a year and not scratch the surface.
You bet.
A lot of that is with grizzly bears. So we help out with grizzly bears, but the other thing we found is when black bears get in trouble, they don't have quite the leeway as grizzly bears do. They tend to just get killed. Management actions, and that is always hard for us because we're like, man, that could be a bear that a hunter could take or whatever. And so we do a lot of stuff to keep bears out of trouble, keep them on the landscape for people to enjoy, whether it's hunting or taking pictures or whatever. So a lot of that stuff. Then on the hunter advocacy side is just monitoring each state and monitoring actions that are coming against bear hunting or maybe pro bear hunting and supporting where we can, whether it's commission meetings, legislative action, like helping out on bills and doing some of that stuff. We're involved in all of it and try to be, unfortunately, a lot of the legislative stuff takes place all at the same time. So you got a lot of states doing legislative stuff all at once and it gets pretty chaotic, but through partnering with other organizations, we've been able to do a lot of great things for bears.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, as I say, I was curious, a lot of them tend to be geared towards either like hunter retention, that kind of stuff, or, general habitat. And I say general, not to be ultra loose, but like most of the organizations, like again, your big national ones, they're all kind of supporting the same habitat that supports all wildlife at the end of the day. But then you look at a bear and it's kind of that abnormal thing on the landscape that doesn't, you can improve habitat that's going to help, maybe whitetail, mule deer, antelope, grouse, pheasants, you name it, right? They all kind of intermingle, but then you get your bears and they're kind of anywhere and everywhere. So those support programs definitely help. But at the same time, you look at your Mountain West and it's a lot different in terms of like how you'd, hunter access kind of the same thing. You're kind of hunting in places that either already have access to or whatever the case is. Obviously more is better, but I was just curious on that one. Yeah. Cause it seems like most of them are tailored towards the habitat a little bit.
There's a lot of organizations out there doing so many good things for not only habitat, but access. And it's like, okay, so that is being covered and like, we'll support if we need to, but that is not somewhere where we can add value to the sportsman or to wildlife. So we look at like, where is the void in some of this? And for us, it's bear research. There's a lot of bear research going on in some states, like they know so much. And then other states right next to it does nothing. And so it's trying to fill those voids so we can understand more about bears. And then with better understanding, we can manage them better. That might be more hunter opportunity. It might actually be less like, hey, we are over harvesting. And so it's trying to fill that void. And so with that is usually bear research projects. And right now, disease is a big thing. Some of the East Coast stuff, we're trying to bring money to the table to help study disease in black bears and this mange outbreak. And we don't have that here out west. We have different problems, but I would say that's probably the majority of the requests we get. we're so approachable as far as an organization goes that when most of the time when we spend money on projects, it's by someone calling me saying, hey, I've got a bear that keeps getting into my apple orchard and I'm getting tired of it. And I'm like, hey, we got a couple volunteers that could probably put up an electric fence. Turns out those volunteers get access to hunt it now,
Yeah.
and so we try not to we try not to make life too difficult. It's like if it's going to have some impact for bears and bear hunting, like, and someone approaches us, we're like, yeah, this is a great idea.
Heck yeah, man. Yeah, work with the people to make an action happen on the ground where it's at. That's pretty
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. And as far as like your job, in particular, you mentioned you're all volunteers, you got your day job and stuff. So, being the president, how do you, or what is the main piece of what you do? And is it mostly, coordination efforts from all the different states and chapters, or is it, just as much boots on the ground where you're at, or what do you got going on your end?
It's been a steady growth towards getting me not being a one-man show, I would say. Like, and anyone that's been involved with volunteer programs and nonprofits know that it's like, it's really hard to get people to, like, everyone's got great intentions and everyone mentally has like the right mindset, but sometimes it's just getting that, like, hey, when it comes to the grind and the crappy stuff that is not fun, your volunteers usually tap out. That is book work, that is processing memberships, that is making phone calls, that is writing letters, that stuff. But man, if we got a collar project or bear proof garbage can project, something, they're like, yeah, I'm there.
I'm in
But
on it.
we're getting to a point now where a lot more is going to come off my plate. Like, so with what a lot of what I do on a nightly basis is process memberships, correspondence between chapters, correspondence between game and fish commissions, and, daily correspondence, and then, kind of building out ideas and programs with the chapters, trying to get them more kind of freestanding and standing alone and not needing, me to do things. So giving them, we have a very great chapter charter that basically gives them freedom to do quite a bit in their state. They don't need national, but yeah. So, I would say from setting up programs, it used to be I would do them in all the states where I could, and now with chapters, they're doing a lot of their own funding and programs on their own. But I would say fundraising, membership stuff, programs, initiatives, any of that stuff lands on me right now.
Okay. That's quite, pretty heavy load, especially like you said, family, job, everything else on top of that, man. That's a lot.
It's a lot. And there's times where it's very cyclical. This time of year is insane.
Yeah.
And it really what it is because the legislative session, tons of these game and fish commissions have meetings in the spring and early winter. And usually things that are brought up in those meetings concern bears a lot of times. And so, and not only bears, we get called to support trapping, which we do, and mountain lion hunting, which we do, and anything else. And so we are involved in all that. And it's not just hey, yeah, we're in. I have to review it, get with the board. Do we want to support this, not support it, and so there's just a lot going on. And then it seems like as in the spring, as we get moving into summer, it really tapers off to where it's like I can kind of catch my breath and be like, okay, we're building out a new website. So it's like, if we don't get this thing knocked out pretty soon, we're going to, pivot it over to the summer when we have more time. And so just kind of have your hands in everything. But then in the fall, when some of the states that don't have spring hunting ramp up, it gets busy again. So yeah. And honestly, I could spend, I probably nowadays, it's probably an hour and a half a night easily, that I do some Bear Foundation stuff, whether it's being on the phone, calling people back. Usually I'm usually calling people back. They never get me on the first call, but and stuff like this is all part of it.
Yeah, man, for sure. Then you mentioned, membership, obviously. So you guys have, you have chapters, and you said 7 states, I believe.
Yeah, about 5, I think. Yeah.
Or 5 states. Okay. So you got chapters in 5 states. Are all your members typically oriented around one of those chapters, or is it nationwide membership and there's just certain areas that have chapters?
Yeah. So what we do is, when you sign up for a membership, it goes to national. So you're signing up for a national membership, and then we give the chapters half of that. So if you sign up and say, right now Montana doesn't have one, but say I'll use Washington or Oregon, for example. If you sign up for a membership in Oregon, you live in Oregon, I get that in and I say, okay, half of that membership is going to the Oregon chapter. And so
Okay.
what it helps them do is like build some funds, and then it's a recruitment thing for them. So if they can go out and get members in their region or state, that money's going to come back to them. And
Yeah.
then so that's kind of how we do. We have members, I think, in all 50 states. And so, if there's not a chapter there, that just stays at national. And then if a chapter ever comes in there, then we just funnel the half of it back to the chapters, to their bank accounts, and then they can use it for whatever they deem fit. So, and the
Okay.
membership program, for us, membership is huge because it's not the money as much. It's the contact information.
Yeah.
We have these large actions. Like if there's an issue in California and we want to get as many people involved as we can use our membership to, like, all across the United States to help out in California.
Yeah.
And so that, and fundraising, right? If we're doing a huge raffle coming up, and like our members are going to be a huge part of that. And then it's like, okay, now we have access to, 500 to 1,000 people through membership in one click. And then that just is kind of our army, so to speak, and that's what membership's important for.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Big collective voice. Like you said, you might have pinpoint issues, but when the masses come together on something, that's what gets your voice heard and actually accomplishes stuff. Well, especially in the political scene, it seems like you got to have a giant voice. You just don't get heard.
For
So
sure.
no, that's awesome. And then, as far as membership goes, what's all involved in being a member? If I signed up today, how does that look like, and what all
Yeah.
can I get
So
involved in, I guess?
you get the biggest thing for our membership is you get a year. If you sign up for a 1-year membership, it's $35. You get a subscription to Bear Hunting Magazine, which is a big piece for, it gives someone something for spending
Yeah.
$35. And then we send out a packet. I send out a letter and some stickers and stuff. And then, you're kind of in the database. There is some discounts on our website, which we're revamping our website right now. It's going to be a whole new platform. There's going to be state level pages on that. So each state chapter will have their own page, their own landing portal, and they'll be able to put everything for them. And so we're really changing the technology that we use from being a, early 2000s thing to modernizing up into the 2020s. I'm super excited about it. It's going to streamline so much of what we do. But yeah, and then, just kind of having that constant point of contact with us. And I listen to our members, and when members call or email, I'm like, okay, what is going on? Is there an issue? And so it's a little easier to get a hold of me when you're a member or one of the chapters. So yeah, but the magazine, we also have a life member program where you get a Stone Glacier backpack with that, a jacket, a plaque, and then, the life membership piece. It's kind of a one-time and done deal, and still get the magazine until you, I guess, die or they quit making it.
Yeah, you bet. And Bear Hunting Magazine, is that your guys's, or is that a partnership with a different magazine?
That's a partnership with Bear Hunting Magazine's been around a long time, and it was one of the first partnerships we developed early on. Was like, hey, if we want to sell memberships, we want to offer them something. And you guys just happen to be here, and we're a bear hunting group. And so I reached out to, even before Clay Newcomb owned Bear Hunting Magazine, we were sending Bear Hunting Magazine to our members. And so it's a great partnership. There's other organizations that do it, but I think it gives people something of value for the membership. If that's all they get a magazine.
Yeah, man. And I think I like the magazine concept. Like I said, I worked 8.5 years running conservation programs, and seen all the different things. And one of the biggest back and forths I think you see from a company perspective is like, you guys have the kind of an advantage in that you don't necessarily print yours, right? So it's a little bit different. But all these organizations that print them, one of the big sponsorship methods they use to attract companies is print ads and things like that. And that's part of your sponsorship spend and whatever. But there's a big conversation behind that, just industry wide. It's like, with everything moving to digital and video content and social feed and all this stuff, it's like, how much attention does a magazine get? But I can tell you, I've got Pheasants Forever, Whitetails, Hunting Full, I think I still get. There's a couple others, just from like being around and signing up for different memberships and stuff. But when that thing shows up in the mail, it's like that little heartthrob you get. You're like, oh yeah, like, you could not think about that organization for the rest of the month, or whenever it shows up, you're like, oh yeah, man, you get that feel good all over again. So there's definitely something to be said about that tangible, oh, I'm a part of something and I get something for it. And, I've got a stack that I tell myself every day, okay, I got to break into this and dive into some of these stories, but no, that's cool. And I love that it's a partnership with another magazine. I think that's unique. I've never heard of that before. Usually it's a, in-house production level thing, which is an added cost that you guys have to fund that kind of, again, takes dollars from one place to put them in another. So that's awesome.
They've been great partners for a lot of years, and it's a great magazine. It's kind of a thing with bear hunters, like you get Bear Hunting Magazine. I found that, like, if you're a bear hunter, you get that, like, and you always have. And we have a lot of members that are like, I'm opting out because I already get it. And I'm like, yeah, that's OG bear hunter right there. Like, it just was so unique at its time because no one was putting out a bear hunting. That was when Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation's blowing up. It's like Bugle Magazine and you had the pheasant, and it's like now this little bear hunting thing comes out. And it was really cool because the people that write in it, and still to this day, are like legit hardcore seasoned bear hunters, houndsmen. There's biologists that write in it, and then also what they do that is really neat is they provide space for organizations like us to like communicate with our members. We don't do a newsletter. I just don't have the time. So like we can put stuff in the magazine each issue. And all the kind of the organizations that are at state level or national level that are partnered with them get some space. And then I think bear hunters are a unique group. We're getting younger, but I think by and large, I think most bear hunters are a little older. And a lot of the older people will not sit on their phone and look through an e-magazine. They're not gonna remember to go to their computer to check their email to like look at the magazine. But when it shows up, like you said, it's on your counter or it's in your truck, and you're kind of almost forced to look at it, and you always do. And so we just found like going that route, and we've talked about doing it on our own. I'm like, there's just I want to be focusing on helping bears, not producing a magazine.
Yeah, you bet, man. It's a lot. There's a lot to it. That's for sure. No, that's pretty cool. And then you mentioned the lifetime membership, $35 for an annual, and then life. So there's the two tiers, just annual and then lifetime.
Right now there's two tiers, annual and lifetime. The lifetime's $1,000, but there is a 4 installment plan you can do, so you can pay it out in installments. We get a lot of people doing that because the pack that you get is about a $700 pack. And so that's a Stone Glacier pack. It's what I run, and they've been amazing partners as well of ours since, for years. And so that pack and jacket combo, there's a lot of value in that. And then you're a life member, and being a life member has its perks for us. We try and do some things specific for them. And on this raffle that's coming out, they're going to have some additional perks for being a life member.
This is Aaron, and I want to take a quick break from the podcast to talk to you about our first ever partner of the Prayin and Slayin Podcast, an official partner of Light the Fire Outdoors, Dead Nuts Outdoors. These guys allow you to take your range and practice experience to the next level with their ultra high definition, life-size 2D targets. That's right, I said 2D. This technology is super cool because you no longer have to worry about bulky, weather-beaten, 3D super heavy targets for your backyard. And for me personally, being a military family, this is super important. We're actually just gearing up to move to our next duty station here, and I get to fold my entire backyard range, which is a bighorn sheep, full-size grizzly bear, full-size elk, mule deer, pronghorn, and whitetail. All of these targets will fold up into just a few inches of space and weigh like just a couple pounds all together. That's super cool. And they also just introduced their Vital X technology, which actually gives you guys an inside look at the real 3D anatomy of each individual target. Whether you're shooting a black bear versus an elk versus a whitetail, you just simply scan the target. It shows you a 3D real anatomy image of what's going on inside that target, so you can just get educated on why each shot is important and where that arrow or bullet that you hit, what it's actually doing inside as it affects that animal. Guys, if you want to check out more, go to www.deadnutsoutdoors.com. We are so proud to be partnered with these guys and taking their business to the next level. And please check them out again, www.deadnutsoutdoors.com. All right, now let's get back to the episode.
And you don't have to remember to renew every year.
Well, it's at the end of the day, it's less mail for you guys too, right? Like mailing out
Oh yeah,
the renewals and all that.
it's so much nicer when we get live members, just because I'm like, oh sweet, I don't have to like remember to do anything with that one.
Oh, heck yeah, man. And I was thinking about this a while back. It's like, I do annual memberships, I think, with everybody that I'm a part of right now. And every time I get that renewal thing in the back of my mind, I'm like, you should just do the life thing, dude. Like, just get it done, one and done, be done with it. It supports them, and it's like, well, then you think about it, it's like, how many years do I do anything now? And it takes a lot of years to get $35 a pop to reach $1,000. And the amount of support, if the point of the membership is supporting the organization, the amount they can do at $1,000 now is invaluable, and then
Yeah,
it gets that snowball rolling so much faster, and the impact becomes faster, and all this stuff. So I definitely get it, but I need to just probably bite the bullet and just,
it's a large ask though. Like when you're
yeah,
talking
it
to
is. It is.
sportsmen like myself and yourself included, like we don't just have, most of us don't just have $1,000 laying around that you're like, oh, I don't need it. I'm going to finally do this. And so
Yep.
like we're cognizant of that. I'm like, man, it's hard for me. I'm the same as you. I'm involved with a lot of things, and every year I'm like, oh, I should do that, but I'm like, geez, that's a lot of money, And it's like, okay, what we've tried to like, with the life members, the the nice thing that I've always taken the life memberships to heart more, because I look as that is someone that believes in what we're doing. If you're willing to spend $1,000 on an organization, or on the mission of an organization, not necessarily organization, but what we're doing, like I'm like, man, they're buying into it. And there was a time where we didn't have very many life members, and I mean, we're almost half and half now. Like I
Wow.
see a lot of life members come in, and I'm every one of them, I'm like, that makes me feel good, because that's someone that's buying, that believes in us.
Oh,
And that's
100%.
so huge, and a lot of times there are people that are like, I'm going to try this out for a few years and see what these guys are up to. And then when they get that out, I'm like, man, that's even cooler, because they're like, yeah,
I
it
dip my
means
toe in the
it
water.
means a ton to us to see those.
That's so cool, man. And yeah, I think if guys are listening, they or break this down. I mean, it's like $100 a month. If you could just slip $100 a month away by this time next year, that renewal could be for Bear
Yep.
Hunters for life, man. That'd be awesome.
Yep.
Very cool. I had another question for you here. So I was going to ask you about chapter impact. So do these guys, most organizations, again, that I'm familiar with, they've got chapter banquets, fundraising, stuff like that. So you've mentioned your membership-based fundraising and how that works, and the states that have chapters, they keep half of that. Now, when they fundraise, I think the Oregon chapter, if I remember right, I've been watching their story and I follow their page, and they've got a Vortex raffle going on right now. Is it mostly raffles that you guys do that are kind of virtual, or do you guys have in-house banquets? How does all that work, and how does that funding split work between national and state level?
Yeah. So when we set it up with the chapters, we wanted them to retain almost everything they make, because I feel like I see, and I've been in this long enough to where you see this like 50, it doesn't work, because they're doing all the work, but then sending it all to national. And then I would see it, not to throw anyone under the bus, but I saw it with Ducks Unlimited early on when I was involved with them. We raised a bunch of money in Cody for a Ducks Unlimited, through our
Mhm.
banquets. And then we had a very small project in Wyoming to do. And it was in Cody. It was like some signs for a bird viewing area.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was like hard to get money from them. I'm like, we just raised. And so what we wanted to do is be like, it's an 80-20 for us. So the chapter keeps 80% of all the money they raise.
Wow.
20%, and that's on certain circumstances. So if they have a fundraising event, a raffle or whatever, they can keep it. They go out and get $1 million donor, like we don't really have that in there as like we get 20%. Like we will deal with it on an individualized basis. But
Yeah.
if a chapter, like, so Washington, for instance, last year had a mini banquet, I would say. It was kind of like it was at a brew pub. They had some food, they had a bunch of raffle items, and like people just showed up, drank some beer, played some games, raffles, and they made a great amount of money. And
Mhm.
in the beginning, I just kind of was like, just keep it, that's a game changer for a chapter. And then
Yeah.
now we're
Yeah.
moving into being more structured. It's like, okay, hopefully the chapters, because not all of them are able to do a bunch of events or raffles. So it's like, let's just try and figure it out for now. And as we get going and you get your feet under you and you're more established and you're actually doing an event or two a year or a raffle tour a year, we'll worry about the 20%. My biggest goal and the goal of our board has been to lift these chapters up and get them going and not be bilking them for money. Like, they're doing the work, let's get the money and then put that money to work in your state, because they're all volunteers too. So just get it in and put it to work. And then, that's what we need.
Yeah, 100%, man. You mentioned some like the national level things that you guys do with that funding. What do you find at the state level? Like, what kind of projects are those guys getting into, at the state level?
It mirrors a lot of what we're doing nationally, but I think it's more of a, like, it's more of a micro level. So they will do stuff like on a statewide level a lot of times. They're able to go to like an individual game and fish or a Fish, Wildlife and Parks office and be like, hey, you guys are having a lot of problems with bears in this town. And it could be like, okay, we can bring in 4 garbage cans or do a bear spray giveaway just in that town. And so they can really get it granulated what we're doing on a national level. They also are able to identify through relationships with, whether it's department officials, federal officials that are in their area, they're able to develop and foster relationships that will help us get into work down the road. So it's like, you can't just go into a game and fish office or a fish wildlife park or any department office and be like, I got 20 grand, I want to do a bear study. They're going to laugh you out of there. Because we can't go collar and trap them and do all that on our own. That's not legal. We need them. And so by having them at the state level, they probably already have a lot of those relationships built, so they can start doing things on the ground there just to build the relationship out to get work in the future. That for me is really hard living in Cody, to be able to be in Washington, Colorado, Oregon, Denver, wherever all at once. And so they are working on it now. Most of them have, one of the asks that I have of the chapters right when they start, they get going and we have a lot of calls and meetings, is sit down together and just identify like 1 or 2 things that, like, if you could do this right now as a chapter, what would you want to do? And then that's usually like, okay, we're going to try that first. And then usually over time, you're like, man, there's a bunch of things we want to do. But sometimes it's hard because you're like, well, now we're a chapter. What do we do?
Yeah.
It's like, find something to be focused on and like, go do that. It could be as simple as like, our bear season in this unit ends on May 31st. We would like it to end on June 15th. Great. Make that, get to work on that. And through that, you're building all this work with the department starts trusting you, and then you start trusting them, and back and forth. And then you're like, oh, this would be cool to do next year. And so that's kind of some of what they can do on a micro level. And it just builds us all up as a group. And their fundraising can be any way, going back to your question. So Oregon is doing a raffle right now. And that money's for them. That's their chapter raffle. A couple of our chapters have done like some mini banquets and stuff, and they're just getting creative with ways to raise funds for themselves. And so we're going to see more and more of it going forward. We had a great call last night with all the chapter leads about some ideas, and that they're all excited and want to get to work. And in the nonprofit space, money is the issue, no matter what you do. And it's, you can't just go do all these great things for wildlife and hunting with a handshake and no money.
That's it, man. Yeah, exactly right. No, I love that. They got a few different pots to eat from, I guess, and they get to get out there and do it at the local level. And I think it's crucial, like you said, they kind of just pick a mission. Because I was kind of thinking the same things. Like, if you start a chapter anywhere, it's like the first step is like, what now? And a lot of organizations, they've been established, they've been around for decades, and they kind of have a real formula that goes in and says, hey, you guys want to start a chapter? You need this many members. Here's the buy-in or whatever that looks like, and then here's what we're going to do. Here's your banquet package, all the stuff. And at the end of the day, you're kind of like, okay. And then they get to sit back after that big initial workload and say, okay, well, here's kind of how that organization operates, and here's what we're going to get you involved with, and here's your contact list. But with something like this, it's a lot more grassroots. It really is
for sure.
Those relationships and stuff. Yeah.
And I think we have a national banquet. I would say it's a national banquet in terms it's the only one we do with kind of the reach is national, and it's in Cody here. The reason it's here is because I live here and I can do most of the work and get it put together, and I'm here. And we get a lot of people that are like, you need to have a banquet here and here and here because it's easier to get to. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that is so much time and energy and work and money And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
for right now, but what I'd like to see eventually is like, there might be a national thing one day in a more easier to travel to location. Cody in January is hard to get to.
Yeah.
But I would like to see the chapters doing more on their level and being like, hey, we had a Washington banquet and it'll probably make more than a national banquet, you know, but or an Oregon one, or maybe a West Coast one and an East Coast one. And it's like having multiple events going on throughout the course of the year. The fundraising is one thing, but it's just it's talking to people, you know,
Yeah.
getting out there and letting them know we're here. And
Yep.
that's a I've been doing this a long time, and I talk to a lot of people and they're like, I didn't even know about you guys. I'm like, gosh dang, how is that possible? But
Yeah.
it's a big world.
It is. It's a big world. It's faster every day. So if you don't
Yep.
catch it at the 7-second attention span we have, it's going to miss you for the next 365 days. That's nuts. And when Eric had, told me about you guys, I was following him, obviously, and checking out his page, and he's had some rumblings about it and little teasers he was dropping. I'm like, is he starting this thing? I've never heard
Yeah.
of it before, honestly. And
Yeah.
then he messaged me the other day and he's like, hey, you need to get in touch with Joe. He's the guy that started. And when he said 2007, I was like, okay, these guys have been
We've
around a
been
while.
around a minute. Yep.
Yeah, and it's had some name changes, so maybe that might have been part of it
Yeah.
too. And it was more regional. Now it's kind of nationwide. So, no, man, that's fantastic. As far as like the organization as a whole, or Bears in general, like what are the biggest challenges that you guys, the startup is one thing. What's a big challenge you face as an organization, and what do you think Bears are really, or bear hunting, maybe better, is facing as the biggest challenge to you guys?
I think as an organization right now, our biggest challenge is I would say our biggest challenge is we are all volunteer. So it's a blessing and
Yeah.
it's a challenge. We have gotten to the point where a lot of the things that need to get done require a lot of time, and it's back end stuff. It's not fun, fluffy stuff. It's like, having someone that can talk with the chapters on a regular basis and organizing and building out our back end infrastructure, whether it's, website work, bank work, making things more streamlined so we can go out and just do and not have to think so much about, well, how am I gonna get this check to them? And then and so all the chapters are under the same EIN, which is our national, and that's caused some issues down the road. It makes a chapter spin up quicker, but then if one chapter wants to use US Bank and the other one wants to use US Bank, they go in and they're like, you already have a bank account. So it's like stuff like that is,
Yeah.
having maybe someone that's kind of like doing this on a paid day-to-day thing alleviates so much of it. So I would say that as a chapter, as a foundation, is our biggest challenge right now. And we are working around it, so we don't have to get to that point yet. But I would say that time and volunteers and time and probably that I would say it'd be having the all volunteer kind of model right now. And then as far as bear hunting goes and bears, the biggest threat is outside. It's coming from the outside attacks on bear hunting, whether it's because some states allow hunting with dogs, which we support, whether it's some states allow hunting with bait, which we support, or it's just bear hunting in general, because they're like trapping, lion hunting, bear hunting, and that's what they go after. Because it's really hard to go after anything with ungulates, because for us right now, I would say on top of that is changing the mindset of the people in the middle on bear hunting. People that love bear hunting are going to love bear hunting, right? And you're never going to change the mind of someone that is so adamantly opposed to it, because that's just how they feel. They might be a vegan and don't think we need to eat meat, right? The people in the middle that are kind of like, I don't know how I feel about it. It's getting to them and being like, let me explain to you why we love bear hunting or why we love bears. And that is a challenge for bears and bear hunting. And probably the biggest challenge is optics of bear hunting. And the optics are that we're trophy hunters for hides. And we do it to ourselves, because when you see someone bragging about killing a great bear that they worked their butt off for, a lot of times in their caption, they said, well, I saved an elk calf, or I saved a deer fawn, or, they're not showing the fact that we also do this for meat too. And we do it because we love pursuing an apex predator. I've never gone out at bear hunting and said like, man, I hope I save some elk calves today. And that's never my thing.
Yeah.
And so there are people that demonize bears and bear hunting and do it. So when they make those posts or those social media things, or tell someone like, oh yeah, I killed a calf killer. You might have, you might not have. That bear maybe never killed an elk calf. You don't know. But what other people hear is like, bears are bad because we love ungulates so much and deer and elk so much. Bears are bad.
And the only reason I went out today to shoot one is just for the sheer love of elk or whatever. Yeah.
And that might be, it is just a hard thing. We do have states where you still don't have to take the meat out of the field. I mean, that's how bad bear hunting is. And so when you look at, if I'm an anti-hunter and I'm like, man, what am I going to get pissed off about today? Like, I'm going to have my bracelet and I'm going after something. And it's like, oh, these bear hunters don't even have to take the meat out of the field. I thought they were hunters for meat. And it's like, okay, I'm going after that. That's easy. That's low hanging fruit. And then we demonize them on the same side of things. And then we don't talk about everything that there is involved with like bears and bear hunting and how we can use the meat, the fat, and then the whole animal. And so, yeah, that's the biggest challenge. And it's getting picked up by a lot of anti-hunting groups, man. It is where we have great hunting opportunities in some states. People get complacent because you never start missing something until they take it away. Yeah. And bears aren't a resource concern. We got a lot of them, more than we probably ever have in the United States. There's probably more bear hunters than we ever had in the United States, and their population continues to grow. So it's like, cool, this is working. When something is working, you're not like, oh, I'm worried about it. Like, what if they come and take this away? And on the backside of things, many people don't know, but there's been several lawsuits in the West to ban bear baiting. And some that got really scary. Like Idaho and Wyoming almost were not allowed to bear bait for hunting. Yeah. We're losing spring bear hunting in Washington, which was going to be just a temporary thing. They're still not spring bear hunting. And, and it's like, oh, what? They're taking spring bear hunting. And it's like, we're not helping our cause in a lot of respects. And that's where we see our chapter spin up, is when something tries to get taken away. Someone's like, what can I do? I'm like, we're up against it. We got to figure out something. And I wish we would have done it 5 years ago,
stay ahead of it.
To stay ahead of it. And so, yeah, I'd say that's our biggest challenge is how people view bear hunting.
Yeah, man. Do you think, I look at a bear, like you said, especially if you watch any kind of YouTube or, follow like some of the bigger influencers like Meat Eater or Clay Newcomb or whatever, like you learn a lot more about what all these animals have to offer in terms of like a holistic, hey, I just took this animal and now what, like you said, a lot of guys look at them and think, oh, that'd be a cool bear rug or whatever the initial things come to mind. But, as far as like homesteading and stuff, that's getting very popular now. Like I've seen more, let's just say beef tallow products that have just that's gone through the moon right now. Right. Like, and then I think of something like a bear, if you have the wherewithal and desire to tinker and get involved in something like that, I mean, a bear, I'm intrigued now because I really want to get one, and a lot of it has more to do with try the meat. I've never eaten bear before. Obviously, the being able to tan the hide and that kind of stuff would be awesome, or whatever the trophy quote unquote is. But then on the flip side is like I really do want to start messing around cooking with bear fat and do all those like cool crazy things. You hear these other guys talk about. So like I wonder if there would be an uptick maybe in some of that too, of like looking at this animal a little bit different than even like ungulates, where ungulate, in my opinion, it's a bag of meat at the end of the day. And that's pretty much exactly how I look at those. When I go out hunting, it's to fill my freezer. But something like this, it's like, man, there's a lot of added value there that, besides just the, the aesthetic appeal of the hide or whatever you're looking at there, like there's a lot to it.
Yeah. And it is, I would say from now, where we're at today versus 5 years ago, we're light years ahead. And it's because sometimes social media is bad. It's because we have these kind of influencers, and Clay's really done a great job. There's guys like Brett Bent, and there's a ton of guys out there that are like showcasing bears for the entirety of the animal, not just the hide. And that is like something that so many people have already been doing, but they don't understand how to or don't want to share that out. And so when you have people that are, when you have people that have a lot of followers and they're paying attention to them and they're saying like, dude, the best part of that bear is the fat, the 4 inches of fat I got off it in the fall. That is gold. I've hunted in a lot of areas where they value that more than the meat.
Wow.
But I look at an animal on the ground and I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. I got to hide. And I'm not discounting or talking bad on people for wanting that, because I have
Yeah.
specifically not shot certain bears because of the color, because I want
Mhm.
that color hide.
Yeah.
But it's only part of it, and it should only be part of it. We should look at it as like, okay, now I got some great meat. That the stereotypes of bear meat are, it's ridiculous. And I got fat. If you get a spring bear, you don't get a lot, but you get some. And so you're using more of the animal than you do probably. I never have taken elk fat. I've killed I don't know how many elk in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, people are using, and it's changing. And even if you do go out and you're like, man, part of my deal is I'm an elk guy and I want to make sure I'm keeping balance. That's great. You go shoot a bear and it's like, yeah, you're part of the equation of conservation and balance. But just, I ask people to like maybe appreciate the animal for what it is, not for what you did for another species. Like,
Yeah.
if you think about it, it's like show some respect a little bit maybe for that species.
Yeah, man, 100%. And I love that, you kind of mentioned it very early on that you looked at bear hunting and kind of got into it because it gave you 2 more months or 3 more months in some cases of, extra hunting time. And that was the coolest part about Montana is like you're
Mhm.
basically hunting for 365 days a year, hunting or
Yeah.
fishing. Like
Yep.
you have no reason not to be outside chasing something. And to be able to do something like that in the spring that's just as intense and effort put in and everything else is like an elk hunt or anything else. When you're out there grinding and glassing and covering miles where the snow doesn't
Mhm.
have you, blocked out or whatever the case is. So, yeah, that was always the coolest part to me. And to be able to, it truly becomes a hunt for that animal. It's never been a bycatch type thing. And I've seen bears in the fall, but it wasn't ever like you're still kind of on that deer mission or on that elk mission or whatever. It's like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. But, but yes, for having that dedicated season, I think that's the way to go about
I got a story, and I'll tell you this, and people think I'm a loon, but and I've
it.
always said this story is kind of like to back up my. I would give up all other species if they said you can pick one. I'm bear hunting. That's me. I don't care. I mean, I love elk. They're big and heavy buggers, and they feed our family. We eat deer and elk and whatever we kill, but they're just big, so you can feed your whole family for a long
Yeah.
time. But I had a mountain goat tag in Northwest Wyoming, like this extremely, it's like less than 1% drawn odds. And my buddy Zach from Montana, who we hunt all the time together, grew up together. He's like, I'm coming down, we're gonna go hunt. And I said, all right. We kind of were packing in and we had a base camp and we're way up on like the park boundary, way up in the high country. And there's this road that kind of accesses some of the country we were hunting, and we were parked on the road one day on the four-wheelers and we got a ton of snow. So the mountain goats were like kind of pushing lower. So we kind of came out of where we were hunting for a couple of days and we're letting the storm go through and just kind of glassing down on the road and just watching these goats on the other side. And this guy comes up on another four-wheeler. He's like, oh, what are you guys doing? He was a sheep hunter. He's like, I got this sheep tag. And I was like, oh, I haven't seen many rams. They kind of pushed out. And he's like, man, I got to tell you, I saw the biggest black bear down on the road down there. I was like, where was he? And he's like, oh, he's right down by this junk, da da da. And he tells me, and I just looked at my buddy. I'm like, pack up, we're out. And I was like, we are bear hunting now. Like, I don't care if I have a once in a lifetime mountain goat tag. Bears just make me mental. Like, I was like, let's go get a look at this bugger and see. And the rest of the day, we chased that bear around. Never killed it, but I
Never
was
got
like,
him.
no. And then the next day it was just like back to mountain goat hunting. But I will put on hold anything if I can go bear hunting. So people were like, yeah, I was deer hunting. I saw a bear. I'm like, do you have bear tag? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, to me,
Yeah.
that's just me though. Like, I got to forget that. I forget sometimes people aren't crazy like me when it comes to them. So
Oh yeah, man, that's awesome. Did you end up getting your mountain goat?
I did. It was a tough hunt, man. It was mentally and physically exhausting. A lot of time scouting, preseason, a lot of time in there during the season, and early on not seeing a ton of great billies, and we ended up getting that was in gosh dang, I can't remember the year. It was 17 or 18, and we just got pummeled with snow in September. And it actually cut the access down for us so much, and like feet in the high country. And we at one point we were camped back in there and it was 10 below and we had deep snow, and the goats just act so differently in snow, in this when there's no snow, they're up on these big flats up on top of these peaks and there's good grass, and they kind of get into the rocks more when it snows, and they're eating and all the stuff off the rocks. And multiple times we had great billies that were in range, but unattainable. Like you just couldn't have got it out. There was no way. And thank God Zach was there a couple of times, or I'd still be fishing one out of a crevice. You know, he was just like, dude, you're not doing that. I'm like, no, we can get it out. He's like, how? You know, he was a voice of reason for me, and ended up getting one more because it was accessible. Like that was what made me decide on that billy and not a bigger one. It was, I could get it out. You know, we didn't have horses
100%.
or not. We're on foot, and it was just gnarly country. So
yeah, man, you got to be careful. That's, just Western hunting in general. Again, just while we're sharing tips and tricks on that, I guess, is it makes you think a whole lot different when you're a Midwest boy like myself, or, then lived on the East Coast for a little bit. And then you think, oh, we're going to Montana, dude. You're watching all the YouTube videos, doing all the things, and everybody's like, oh, we hiked in 10 miles this day, and we did 7 miles and 3. I tell you, anybody, the first 2 miles you put into a backpack trip into the mountains, you're going to be like, oh, by the way, if I kill an 800,000-900,000 pound animal, I've got to backtrack, and we're only halfway there. Like, dude, it'll change your mind so fast on what's realistic and what's possible. And I remember the first time seeing just an elk on the hoof. I think he came into 40 yards and just stopped just perfect, the wrong side of a tree, and didn't get a shot. But first time I ever saw him, I mean, I think my mouth was hanging open. I was just like looking at his hind quarter, and I'm like, if he runs on that side of the mountain, this is gonna suck.
Oh boy.
And that wouldn't have been a hard pack. I would have been up one mountain and down the other side to where we were camped, but it was still like a just unbelievable amount of work that you knew you were about to get into if it's successful. And bear hunting, on that note, it's usually not in the most easy spot to get to, for Western hunting.
And thankfully I've killed a few bears that I've been able to maybe 2-trip it, and usually I'm with some, especially in grizzly country now, there's usually 2 of us always. There's just so many. And 2 guys can get a bear out, meat and hide, and so that makes it nice. You thump a nice bull 3-4 miles back. 2 dudes ain't doing it. I mean, I see these guys, I've carried 180-pound pack on. I'm like, I'm not, I can't.
No.
Maybe you're superhuman, but and as I get older, I'm like, I don't think I need to get, it's just stuff hurts more and it takes me longer. And I'm getting up there to where I'm like, man, elk are heavy. I love eating them, but man, they're heavy.
Yeah, man. Get it to where you can shoot it at the top of the hill, back the truck up, drop the tailgate, and let them slide in.
Yeah,
That's a cool ball game. And I guess, I don't mean to just with you guys being all over the place and there being a huge East Coast presence out here. We're in DC right now, and I get black bears on my cameras out here. I've had them not anywhere they've had reports of them through this kind of, I'm like 12 miles as a crow flies from DC in this like park thing, wood lot behind my house. Apparently there's been bears that cruise through there, but on the public hunting areas about 12-15 miles the other direction from me, I've had 3 different black bears in 2 years we've been here show up on camera. So they're here.
The densities in the US are insane right now.
Yeah.
It is the golden age to be a bear hunter. Really, it is. Like, there is more bears, black bear. I mean, we have bears in almost all 50 states. I mean, Hawaii doesn't, but you got, the Midwest is filling in now, where we've not, like Iowa, there's been sightings of bears and stuff. So it's like, man, they're so prolific. That's why I love them so much. One thing I always kind of like, I'm sure anyone that's listening to a podcast with me has heard this, but since we landed here and kind of settled, the Native Americans and the wild people, the wildlife was here anyways, right? And so they managed it and they hunted, and there was no resource concerns. Well, then we show up, right? And we come out west and we almost kill every buffalo, and we do all this damage to wildlife. You know what animal since that time to now has never been close to being extinct? Freaking black bears, man.
Yeah.
Like, they're just they're survivors. They can live anywhere. I mean, they're in the deserts of Mexico, all the way up to the Northwest Territories, all the way across eastern west seaboards. And all that is done. We've been hunting them and encroaching on them. And I'm like, man, there's no species like that to me. Maybe whitetail. They're just like invasive almost at some points. But I mean, I just look at them, I'm like, man, especially for a predator that doesn't have naturally high numbers. To be able to do what it's done and why we're hunting them. I mean, if you want to talk about management and hunting as a success story, look at black bears.
Yeah, exactly right, man. Well, and as far as that goes, like what is, for people to be able to support you guys, is there a place that they can hop on your website, to support you there? Like just donate if they want to just donate or
Yeah.
learn more maybe about becoming a member and then sign up for membership. Is that all done through your website?
Yeah, so you can pop on our website, and as we go forward, the address will always stay the same. We are revamping it, and so but our website's got all the membership stuff, donation stuff, any news kind of, and what you need. I'm responsible for updating it, so don't be alarmed when you see the advertisement for the banquet that has already happened on the front page. I just haven't got on there, got it gone yet. But yeah, and then we do social media, so Facebook, Instagram. And then honestly, like when you get onto our website, there's a phone number and an email address there. That's mine. So you can call me and you can ask me questions and you can talk about Bear. I mean, that's what I love to do. Just know that I might not get back to you immediately, but I will get back to you at some point in time. And so we're real approachable. And as we get kind of going, if you're wanting to get interested in what's going on at the state level and with your chapter, if there's one in your state, just reach out to me and I can put you in contact with the right people. And then, if anyone's interested in starting chapters, we have a pretty good blueprint to do that now. And so we definitely want to, in 2025, get 3-4 more chapters on board so we can kind of start expanding a little bit more and growing our reach. So yeah, anyone, and like I said, that number and email address on the website's mine. So
And the website again?
it's AmericanBearFoundation.org.
Awesome. Easy enough. And I'll share that in the show notes as well for anybody that's looking. As far as business partners, obviously a lot of conservation in the outdoors industry is supported through business partnerships. Is there a way that businesses can find out about partnering with you, or is that a direct phone call to you as well?
Direct phone call to me. And
Okay.
that's a good one to do. We try and take care of our sponsors. We've had some that have been there since day one and like we're pretty loyal to those people. But we're always wanting to like pair up with like-minded organizations, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit. We're very stuck on our mission and our values and the values of our members. So sometimes like we've had people approach us and it just doesn't line up, like, or their past funding doesn't line up with our goals and beliefs. And so we try to be picky, but not picky if you're squared away and a good conservation supporting organization. And yeah, that's a phone call away. Just reach out to me and love to have those conversations.
Awesome, man. No, that's great. And yeah, we'll be sure to guide people to the website there. Me personally, I think we've got a couple other things to talk about, maybe offline, but I think there's some good opportunities for you guys in that fundraising side of things, or product sponsorships, things like that too. That we could
For
definitely
sure.
get you connected with. That'd be awesome.
We appreciate it. Just being able to come on and talk to folks like you basically for us, we're getting to utilize your platform that you've worked really hard to build. And so that's our voice is partnering with other people. We just can't do it right now on our own.
Yeah, man, absolutely. No, love to have you guys on, and it's part of our mission too. Veterans and conservation, pretty easy.
Heck yeah, yeah.
So any way we can give back to you guys and help spread the word about what you're doing, that's what we're here for. So you mentioned you had some pretty lofty goals, 10 years down the road. Can you share a couple of them with us to leave the folks with what they're getting involved in?
Yeah, the couple of the programs we want to build on, right? So we want to start making sure that all the states that we have chapters in are doing some black bear research of some sort. We do a lot of grizzly bear stuff, but the feds fund some of that. The states fund a ton of it. And a lot of people don't know that. Like the states fund 70% of the grizzly bear stuff that goes on. So
Wow.
Your taxpayer dollars are helping this species stay on the endangered species list. Anyways, that's a whole 2 or 3 more episodes.
That's another episode for sure.
Yeah, and so like what we want to do is strengthen our board as far as like have a plan for me to one day be not the guy, right? And I think that comes with having more great people involved in the organization. That is one thing that we've talked about. And having a couple of those bigger business partners, having some bigger funding sources that we don't have to be worried about like building out money every year and how we're going to operate, and so those are 2 big ones. And then I think honestly in the 10-year goal, and we've talked a lot about this, is having 1 or 2 paid staff members that are maybe one's a director or one's a admin that's doing a lot of the clerical stuff that really takes up a lot of time. And that's one thing I got into this to go catch bears and be around bears and not to be in my home office, every night.
Yep.
And so that is a big one. I think with that comes so much, so many things we can do down the road. And you know, I want to be able to talk to people in 10 years and they know who we are. I don't want the people to be like, oh, I never heard of you guys. That's a huge thing. You know, we had a great call last night with our chapter leads, and one guy said, hey, I'm a huge college football fan. Like I love that. Next to hockey is it. And he's like, I am telling our chapter, we need to have name, image, and likeness. Like, we need to be thinking like that as an organization. Like, people need to recognize our name, our logo, and kind of our brand. And that is a big goal of ours. And that just is that's just grassroots stuff right now, you know.
Yeah.
But we would like to, you know, we model ourselves kind of after groups like the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and Mule Deer Foundation. They're big and they've done this, you know, and we're able to grow at scale, and it's incredible. And so we kind of want to just get closer to that and be less, you know, kind of grassroots kicking doors.
Yeah, you bet, man. Like it all starts at this level, you know, fortunately and unfortunately, but yeah, man, however we can get the word out, we definitely will. And hopefully we get a few more members out of this and get some new partners maybe for you as well to help bolster those goals and get them on their way.
That's awesome. And one thing that you might appreciate, one thing that we're very proud of, every year we take 1 or 2 veterans bear hunting. And so we partner with some other veteran organizations. Make a Difference Outdoors in California has been one that I've worked with for the last few years. And I've had some great experiences. That's probably my favorite thing of what we do. For me personally, I get more out of doing that than I do anything. And we get to take another gentleman this spring in May in Wyoming. And we're going to bear hunt with him. And we've had some just getting people outdoors, whether you are a veteran or a Leo, or we've done some disabled hunter hunts. And honestly, I get a lot of people that just call and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing, help me. And I love doing that. Like, just helping people is what I've taken the most out of with this, is the amazing people I've met that I never would have. And the ability to help people through something I love is like, that's why I do it.
You bet, man. Absolutely. Just to share the love of the resource and the love of the game. It's that's why I think every hunter, once they get into it a little bit, that fire will catch you if you're an outdoorsman, and it'll get you eventually, and you'll care a lot more about that the helper spirit that's in all of us to teach that next person, whoever that is, how to do it. That's awesome.
For sure.
Well, heck yeah, man. Well, again, I can't thank you enough, Joe, for coming on. And I've had a huge education on the American Bear Foundation, and I hope everybody else has too. And I know who you are now. Don't worry about that. And I can tell you got at least 1 new membership coming your way. So I hope I don't cause you too much work to process.
Thank you so much. And anything we can do to help you guys and any other people that come your way, man, it's got to be a community effort. So.
100%, man. Yeah, I've got, some of the goals with Light the Fire Outdoors and Prayin and Slayin and all that stuff. It's like I said, conservation and veterans is our mission, and it's growing every day. I just took the opportunity in September to really dive deeper into this and turn it into more of a full-time effort. And the amount of connections that are being made at such a rapid pace, dude. I think I've got some goals to where I think the partnership aspect will be big, but being able to maybe sponsor those vets that get to go hunt with you, so you guys don't flip the bill on some of those things, or whatever the case is, just to keep that mission and snowball rolling.
I love it. I think what you guys are doing is so lined up with this kind of the values of not only our foundation, but the people that are involved with our foundation. And anything we can do to help, that's why we're here. And we may never get to be as big as some of these others, but at the end of the day, we're all going to be in this and go like, we did something, at least.
We made an impact.
We did.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about, brother. Well, again, Joe, thank you so much, man. We'll be sure to guide people to the website there in the outro. And man, I'll let you, I know I'm standing between you and dinner, and that's a dangerous place to be for a bear hunter. So
no
I'll let
worries,
you get
buddy.
back to it, brother. Well, thanks
you
again.
Man.
You bet.
Appreciate
Have a good
you.
one. We'll see you.
You too.
Testing. Well, there you have it, guys. That was Joe Kondelis with the American Bear Foundation. Again, what an awesome organization, and awesome place to be started, man. These guys are truly the grassroots level of conservation, which is my favorite place to play in the outdoors industry, is that grassroots level. And it's really what our business here at Light the Fire Outdoors is all about, is expanding that mission. And then, through that, serving veterans and conservation organizations wherever we are. But man, what an awesome organization, guys. So get out there and check them out, AmericanBearFoundation.org. Sign up to be a member. I know I will be after this podcast, probably looking at that life membership here. And I would encourage anybody who can financially do that to do it. It helps these organizations out so much to become a life member right up front, and they can start putting those dollars to work right away. For anybody else, man, $35 a year. I mean, you spend that at McDonald's anymore for one trip for one person almost. Holy cow. So anyway, get out there, support those guys. We want to thank our sponsor of the episode, Dead Nuts Outdoors. Those guys make some awesome 2D targets, guys. Get out there and check them out. We got some really cool stuff coming, if it hasn't come already, where you guys might actually be able to get an opportunity to get a deal on those through the Prayin and Slayin partnership here. So more to come on that, and hopefully the ad is already read in this episode, and maybe that's happened by this time. So cool stuff coming there. Check them out, deadnutsoutdoors.com. Awesome organization, and they're passionate about our mission as well, serving veterans and conservation. And then, man, we have to close it with a Bible verse, and I think we're going to close every conservation one with the same verse, man. I think it just speaks so much into the life that we have and what the world and these animals and nature and everything like that can teach us. It's Job 12, verses 7 through 10, and it says, "Just ask the animals and they will teach you. Ask the birds of the sky, they will tell you. Speak to the earth and it will instruct you. Let the fish in the sea speak to you. For they all know that my disaster has come from the hand of the Lord. For the life of every living thing is in his hand, and the breath of every human being." Man, it's our job to be the hands of God here on earth and to serve the environments and to serve the animals and to manage the landscape, man. And that includes predators, and includes elk, deer, ungulates, all the cool stuff. And it's just our job that God put us here to do, man. So let's all get out there and do it and take care of it. Always leave it better than you found it, guys. And with that, I'm going to leave you to it. And as always, remember to keep praying and slaying.